In this video, I'm going to show you how to finish your windmill by putting your windmill wheel onto your wheel arm. I put a wheel band on here just to show you something that's important. It's a little hard to see when you have the sails and everything in the way, so I thought I'd do this just for clarification. One of the important things when you go to put this on, when you have all the wheel sails on each section, is that you continue a pattern of overlapping the wheel bands correctly. So this wheel band is under here. This wheel band is on top of it like this. Now that means when this one gets to the next one, it should be down here, this one's over here. Therefore, when this wheel band gets to the next one, it goes like this one overlaps. If you don't do that, your wheel's going to get bigger and bigger as you go around, and it's also going to be out of round, and you want your windmill wheel to be as round as possible. This little tip will help you a lot, so make sure that you remember overlap, underlap. Now what happens when you get all the way around with the one you started? They're not going to lap. You can pull one off and slide it back in there if you need to. So follow a pattern all the way around. It'll help you keep your wheel true and straight. We're ready to start putting our first wheel section on. Now, a couple of things I do before I put the first section on. I check all the threads, make sure the threads look good at the end of the wheel arms, and then I've loaded these wheel arms up with grease, just tons of grease. We always want to try to protect those threads because we're sliding metal up and down on there. We don't want to screw those threads up, and galvanizing is a little tough to work with once in a while. Another tip is I turn the wheel so the pitman arm brought the pulley down to the bottom. That way as we rotate the wheel to put things on, we're not going to have that pitman arm pulley assembly hit the top up there where our hook is. Now I've got the tail out there without a tail vane, just the tailbone on, and I've got it secured at that end so it keeps it level as we go around here. You can see it's got a little bit of a tilt up, and that's okay. I want to make sure that it doesn't roll over on me as I add more weight to the front end. So having the tail vane on at this point is very helpful. It's a good counterbalance. Let's get to work and start putting the sections on. We're working our way around, adding wheel sections on the wheel arms. Now here's a tip for you. When you go to put this on, for right now, use plain nuts. Don't use the locking nuts on here because you're going to have to take them off to add the next wheel section. Make sure you've got the overlap going correctly that we talked about earlier. Here's a mistake I made. So I let this wheel arm slip out. So let me just slide it back in, and I'll tighten that up. There we go. Want to make sure those are in there. This is parallel. We're looking good. Let's just keep adding wheel sections. We're ready to add another wheel section. It's a lot easier to do if you have some help. Call your friends up, invite them to lunch, remind them to wear old clothes, bring them out here to have them hold a wheel section for you. Well, we're just going to heft this thing up here. We'll get one wheel arm on, line up the second wheel arm, slide it down. Make sure it's inside here. Oh, there we go. All right, now both are inside the wheel arms on the inner band. Let me slip a nut on here for you. Don't want that popping off and ruining those threads. Then I'm just going to come down here where it's gravity neutral. I'll slide the lower section in, take the nut off. Nice and greasy. Slip it apart. There's one, two, and let's put that nut back on. Again, this is why we're using the plain nuts, is so we can get those back on there. And just let gravity hold it down. Looking good. Let's just keep going. We're down to the last wheel section. The key to do with the last wheel section is keep your pattern, your overlap going correctly, but also don't fight gravity. So right now, these wheel arms are sort of getting pulled apart. So if I rotate this windmill left, right, or all the way to the bottom, those wheel arms are going to come in or out, depending on the position I have it. So don't fight gravity, protect those threads, keep a lot of grease. You should be covered with grease right now. One more to go. We've got the wheel sections on. Oh, that last wheel section went on pretty easy. Remember how we were doing the overlap, so when I got to the very first section that we put on, I had to stop, pull that one off, then slide it back over. But I also want to tell you, it took me a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just massaging it and pushing things around. I didn't want to waste your time watching that. So we have all of our wheel sections on. Before we do the inner band, I want to go back down. Remember, we're using those temporary nuts up here? I want to take and put a castle locking nut and a washer on all of these, just finger tight, before we do the inner band. So let's stop and do washer, locking nut, just hand tight on all of the wheel arms before we go into the inner band. We went ahead and put a washer and nut on the outside wheel bands, but now let's work on the inside wheel bands. So we'll just take a tapered drift and we'll line up the holes. There we go. And let's make sure that if this wheel band is on the inside towards the hub here, it's the same out there. Yeah, that's good to go. So it's our last check. We'll take a pair of vice grips and let's tighten this down. And let's make sure that taper is in there. Now we want to use a long bolt, a washer and nut, and let's put the nut on the inside towards the hub so it's easier to get to. So that's a tip that'll help you, is put the nut in here. You can put a socket on it a little easier to tighten it up. We'll go all the way around. Remember, everything's still loose. Here we go. The wheel's on. We're ready to start tightening things down. So we're just going to use a ratchet. We're not going to use impact wrenches on this. We're going to tighten this side, and then we're going to go across and tighten on that side. We'll tighten the top, tighten the bottom. Doesn't hurt to spin the wheel a little bit as you're doing it. Let it sort of find itself in the center. Again, no impact wrenches, just a socket wrench. We'll do the outside band, then we'll do the inside band, and then we'll see if we can get the thing out the door.